I just watched Casablanca, which I watched because I have seen a lot of very modern films recently, and I thought, I'll watch a classic I'd never seen. And I was a little bit worried it might just be kind of so critically acclaimed because it's old and so it's been done better since, but this was original. But no, it's really, really good. So going into this film, all I knew was there was a scene, I think presumably near the end, where a man says goodbye to a woman as she gets on the train, and at the train station there's like a big clock, and that's the only image I had in my mind from this film. I was a bit confused when I got to the end, and that scene just isn't in the film at all. So I googled it, and the only image I have in my head from Casablanca is a scene from Brief Encounter. But hey, it's basically it's a film from 1942. And it's set, so it was filmed during the Second World War, and it's also set during the Second World War. So although it was filmed in America, it's set in Casablanca, which is a city in Morocco, and it's basically about, during the Second World War, to escape Nazis, a lot of Europeans would try and get to the United States, and so to get there, they'd need to go to Lisbon in Portugal to get them book passage to the United States, but Portugal was neutral, but of course to get to Portugal you have to go through France and Spain, which are not. The only way of getting to Lisbon is to get a boat to Casablanca in Morocco and then go from there to Lisbon and then across to the United States. The story takes place mainly in one street and in a bar. It's called a cafe, but it's basically a bar, which is owned by Rick Blaine, who's played by Humphrey Bogart, and he's an American expat who we don't immediately know why he isn't in the United States himself. But yeah, the bar is all populated by, both Nazis and people who are trying to escape the Nazis. But because Morocco at the time was occupied by France before the war, but then obviously the Nazis occupied France, which meant Morocco's in a weird state where it's occupied by an occupied country, and it's not neutral and it's not allied, it's not Axis, it's in a state where there's Nazi officers there, and there's people who are kind of everyone knows are allied, but they're all kind of civil, and they don't want to start a big thing. It's kind of all it's all quite hushed when someone's found out and that they're trying to escape to Lisbon and then to America. They're caught, but they try not to make a big deal out of it, and they're always very polite with the Nazis, and the Nazi characters in this they're kind of three-dimensional. They're not just like these are evil people. I think both sides of the war are shown kind of with respect, that they are just sort of regular civilians forced to take part in a war which is kind of nothing to do with them. So Humphrey Bogart's character of Rick, he previously, I think like the year before or something, he had this short romance with a Swedish lady called Ilsa, who just suddenly comes into the bar for no reason with another man, and it goes on from there. I don't want to ruin too much. I think it's like a love triangle, but I think what's so good about this love triangle, which probably every single other love triangle I've ever seen in fiction, is I genuinely didn't know who she was going to end up with, or if it's going to be anyone, or just what was going to happen. Whereas normally, like, love triangles are so predictable. You got Twilight, like, oh, is she going to end up with the lead who's been in it properly since the first film, or just this random other guy? Or is Harry Potter is he gonna pick Cho Chang, who's only been in a couple of them and is basically just someone he knew's ex-girlfriend and doesn't have much? Or is he gonna end up marrying the sister of his best friend? They're normally very predictable, but they're not at all. The whole ensemble is very important. There's it's really good how Casablanca is being a place where all these different people from different walks of life and different backgrounds during the Second World War can be. I think it's really nice how we get a snapshot of all these different things, and of course the local Moroccans, although they're actually surprisingly aren't that many, and they're all played by white actors. But so the romance between Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman is the main focus, and there's something which I thought was a bit weird. Well, first of all, this is potentially controversial. I think both actors are great. In fact, I think every performance in the whole film is great, but potentially controversial me saying, but because I didn't grow up with this as a classic. I haven't been exposed to 80 years or however long of these two being a part of cinema, but I didn't think they had very much chemistry. It wasn't terrible, but I think because he's about twice her age, and I don't know, I didn't get much romantic chemistry off them. But also something which is a bit strange, which I think it's something which I don't think they'd bother with now, but I noticed it basically in wide shots of her when she's on her own or where she's kind of with just other characters. It doesn't matter. She is clearly a very tall person. She looks very sort of long, like long and thin, and when they're together, she's always awkwardly, like she's often sitting down. Or there's a bit in the flashback to them in Paris where they're on a boat on the Seine, and she's like they're standing up, but she's like leaning forward awkwardly, and then he throws something and she catches it, but she just gets up really suddenly and catches it, and but she's still kind of squat, and it looked really awkward to me. And so I was like, are they trying to hide the fact that she's about the same height or taller than him? Because back then they wanted to have, like, you know, the masculine man and the petite feminine woman. And so I googled it, and sure enough, Humphrey Bogart was 5'8" and Ingrid Bergman was 5'9", and I could not unsee that. It's so obvious once you realise, like, she just every shot she's so either she's clearly he's on a box, or she's squatting, or she's sitting down, and it's really obvious once you notice it. Something else about the ensemble is it's very international. I think there's only 3 American actors, even though it was filmed in America. And yeah, they're all from all sorts. I mean, there's Swedish, there's Austrian, there's German. In fact, a bunch of them are actual refugees from Europe who have come to America. Like they're actually who they're playing, pretty much. I mean, one of the Nazis escaped from Nazi Germany because his wife was Jewish. It's very real in a way. Like, and I think you do get that kind of almost noir sense of dread of just every character has a shared emotion of unease, and they can't truly be happy because they don't know what's happening. Like, they're clearly in a very bad situation. And I mean, at this time, it was filmed in 1941, released in 1942. They didn't know how the war was going to go. It potentially wasn't going to be good. And I thought, even though it's a film from 1942, I didn't think it was particularly outdated, really. I mean, there's a bit where Ingrid Bergman calls a fully grown black man boy, and that was a bit yikes. But other than that, I mean, the character was treated with quite a lot of respect, and he was a very good actor. But and there was also there's kind of no Moroccan actors. They're all like North African. They're pretty much everyone's white. But no, I thought it holds up very well for the day. I mean, there's certain things where it's of its time. There's the shots where you see of her when they're trying to make her look very beautiful, like it's almost as if she's glowing, like what they do to the lens. The score is also worth a mention. I think the motif of as time goes by is great, and there's a few songs throughout. Like the one of the characters is the piano player at the bar, and I think it definitely creates an atmosphere throughout the whole thing. It's really good. I'd give it 5 stars. I would definitely recommend watching it. It's clearly important to film history.